a few minutes to allow that to happen, but we've got a good group of you here now. My name is Eleanor. I am from ICLE Europe, and some of you have met me recently at the Stakeholder Dialogue in Manchester, but for some of you I will be a completely new person. I joined ICLE in November last year and took over from Alberto Terenzi at that point, and I'm joining you today along with Serene Hananaya, who some of you may have met at previous events. So I will be facilitating today's webinar, the third in our series of Tier 2 Circle of Learning webinars for the RESIN project. So you'll be hearing a little bit of my voice, and most of all you'll be hearing from Madeline from Technalia, who is the researcher, Work Package 3 leader, joining us today to share with you progress on the Adaptation Options Library. You'll also be hearing a bit from Serene, who, as I mentioned to some of you, is disguised today under the name ICLE Europe Web Conference. So if you experience any technical difficulties, you can write to Serene there in the chat. Right, so first of all, from my side, a very warm welcome. We're really glad you're able to join us today. Today, as you will have seen from the previous communication from the agenda, today is all about a hands-on exploration of the RESIN Adaptation Options Library, as I mentioned, with developer Madeline from Technalia. I know that some of you have already had some experience with the library. For instance, as I already mentioned, most recently in Manchester at our first stakeholder dialogue. But for some of you, it might be the first real hands-on experience with the tool. And so the purpose of today is really to give you an opportunity to get up close and personal with the library for a few different reasons. Firstly, so that you can understand a little bit better, we hope, how to use it and consider how it might be useful for you in your future work on climate change adaptation at the local level. Also so that you can share your impressions and your ideas with us on these possible future uses. And all of this is really with a view to understanding, or tool developer Technalia understanding how they can improve the tool to make it match your needs better, because the library is still under development, as many of you would know. And so there is still time in the coming months to take on board your thoughts and ideas and to make it a useful tool for you in the future beyond the life of the project. So you should all be able to see my screen. You should all now see the agenda up in front of you. So after a brief introduction to the webinar today, I will be handing over to Madeline to introduce the library. So she'll give you a bit of an overview of the vision there and where it's gotten to broadly at this stage. We'll then have an opportunity for Q&A before we really dive into the tutorial part of today, which consists of 3 components. Firstly, an example that will be led by Madeline, followed by two hands-on use cases, so different ways to use the library. And after that, we'll conclude with some final questions and answers before we wrap up for the day. So I should also point out that there will be questions and answers throughout the session. You are more than welcome to ask questions, but we will also have some questions for you. So it really should be a two-way street there. Just in terms of a few technical things to communicate with us, since we are a large group, please keep your microphone muted wherever possible. As I already mentioned, if you have any technical difficulties, please write in the chat window. You can either write to everyone or you can write directly to Serene under ICLE Europe Web Conference, and we'll try to support you, or specifically Serene will try to support you. during the question and answer sessions, you can either use the chat function and type in the window there, and we will then read your question aloud, or you can unmute yourself. But if you do that, if you'd like to ask a question out loud, please introduce yourself with your name and the city you're representing. Okay, just a little reminder, the Tier 2 Circle of Learning, who are we? So obviously, yeah, some of you have had different degrees of interaction with one another, but just, yeah, to remind you that this is who we are. Obviously, there on the left-hand side of each column, Bratislava and Manchester, two of our Tier 1 cities. And making up the 4 Tier 1 cities, Bilbao and Paris. Okay, and where are we? So another refresher on where the Tier 2 Circle of Learning has advanced to date. So this is before my time, obviously, but ICLE kicked off with an introductory webinar to the project in late 2016. This was followed by a second webinar on impact chains, led by Fraunhofer, on the Avavia methodology, which some of you may have attended. Most recently, as I mentioned, some of us met in Manchester for the first stakeholder dialogue. And so this was the first time that the RESIN tools were really opened up to a broader audience, not just Tier 2 cities, but also other external stakeholders. Those of us who didn't meet in Manchester will be meeting in Bilbao for the second RESIN stakeholder dialogue. And yeah, so we're currently setting a date for that. It's looking like the first week of July. And yeah, tool testing is well underway. Developers, not just Technalia, but including Technalia, are currently seeking input and feedback on beta versions of their tools in these last months of the project. The project will obviously wrap up in November this year, so we're quickly coming to a close, but the tools will survive the project, we hope, and that's really where you come in also as potential beneficiaries and users of the final legacy of RESIN. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Madeline from Technalia at this point to introduce the Adaptation Options Library to you. Madeline.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us in this webinar. I'm going to present a little bit what is the Adaptation Option Library we are developing in the RESIN project, in which, well, Technalia is the main leader of this task, but a lot of partners from the consortium are also involved. Siemens is developing the web-based web page library with all the functionality you are going to see in the following minutes. Then the University of Manchester, TNO, Arcadis, BC3, EIDP, and the University of Bratislava, they all provided inputs on the library because, as you will see in the following slide, the library is, well, somehow synthesized the scientific literature. So behind it has a lot of papers and scientific literature which has been reviewed and summarized by other partners, and for which we had the opportunity to count with the partner Siemens, which developed all the functionality and the web-based platform. So the library, in summary, the library covers adaptation measures related to heat. Also, different kind of floods are covered, like pluvial, fluvial, and coastal, and the drought also are considered in this library. So what we aim with the library is the main objective was to include the performance information of the measures. So how effective are or cost efficient are the measures? For example, we were looking on the measure that can reduce the air temperature, for example. So the main focus of the library is to provide some performance information of each adaptation measures. Well, understanding the performance, what we are covering with the library is the cost efficiency in sense of, for example, the benefit cost ratio of the adaptation measures, or we are also covering the effectiveness in sense of how much we can reduce the heat or the flood thanks to the adaptation measures. We are also including some information on implementation of the measures and co-benefits of them. So we are trying to give some, in some cases, quantitative performance information, and in other cases, some qualitative information like co-benefit and implementation. And the aim of doing this is because we wanted to give support to municipal experts or developers or consultants in the elaboration of some kind of portfolio of adaptation measures. So we want to give support to these stakeholders in the creation, for example, of one adaptation plan or in the prioritization of the adaptation measures. So in this regards, the Adaptation Option Library contains almost 100 adaptation measures, and they are grouped in 28 general measures. For example, we are grouping the adaptation measure depending the type of the measures. For example, we have some social adaptation measures. We have also some institutional measure which covers the economic instruments, laws and regulation of government policies and programs, for example. And we are also including more structural adaptation measures, like the ones that are grouped in engineering and built environment. So these are more gray adaptation measures, like you can see in the screen some examples of shadow or temporary flood barriers or urban configuration. These are more gray solutions. We are also including some technological solutions, which can be hard or soft, but are more technological measures, like cooling materials or infiltration techniques, or more related to water production, for example. And we are also considering the ecosystem-based adaptation or green-blue measures, and others which are considered like service option, like wastewater reuse, recycling, water solution, and the measure which can be considered as service. So once we created the adaptation library, we start working with the Tier 1 cities. So the library has been shared with Bratislava and other Tier 1 cities, Paris also. And we have been working with them in order to see for which purpose they can use the library. So at the end, we get some feedback from the city in sense of they see useful the library to use it to evaluate the action plan, how is the progress of the action plan, for example, extracting some information of the performance of the measure, for example. They want to use the library also for better understanding different type of measures and select which can be the variable or the indicator to monitor the effectiveness, because the library is providing different indicators or variables for which the effectiveness is measured in the literature. So it can give some indication of which of indicators can be considered for monitoring. They want to use also in Bratislava the library to complete the Major SADAP report, because it has the Major SADAP has to be completed every 2 years, and even they have local information. For some adaptation measures, they didn't analyze the performance or the cost-benefit information or the effectiveness of the adaptation measure, so they intend to extract this information from the library in order to report the progress of the adaptation plan in the Majors Adapt report. And also they want to use the library to have some examples of the implementation of adaptation options. So they want to have some additional information which can be extracted from the library, or even one can see which is the main paper reference in the library and go to the paper in order to have additional information which can be useful for implementation of the one specific adaptation measure. So this is some conclusion we get from the feedback with Bratislava. Then we also have some interaction with Paris, and we developed a 3-in-1 case study because we work at 2 levels of the city. We work with the Adaptation Option Library at city level or strategic level, and then we try to go in a deep scale in order to see if the Adaptation Option Library can be used at a lower scale, at neighborhood scale, or a district scale. So in the first testing activity at the city level, the feedback we get from the Paris city was that they feel interesting to have all or different studies done on adaptation in one place, so that they can go through one specific measure and they can see which is the paper and reference in the library, and have more detail look into the paper, for example. They feel also interested in the cost effectiveness or efficiency data, because they think that it can be useful to involve and convince politicians. And also, they think that it can be useful for them to detect additional solutions that can be in line with the action of the resilience strategy they already have in Paris. So they need to further develop the action on the resilience strategy, so they think that they can use the library to extract some information which can be useful for develop further the action of this strategy. And as next steps, we are now working with them in this line of identifying which adaptation measure can be included or already included in the resilience strategy. And they want also to see if which person or from the municipality can be the end user of this library, and they want to use it as an educational instrument. So we need to further explore how can be useful the library for educational purposes at municipal level. Then, in sense of the lower scale, we started working at urban development project level, and Paris has 2 case studies in this sense, the Saint-Vincent-de-Paul and Vergy-Charenton. But they feel at the first stage useful to have a look to the library, and but they feel that the main important step to be done before going to the library is to have clear ideas of what kind of information they want to see or extract from the library. So it is important to define first the main objective of using the library, and define which kind of information the user wants to extract. So this conclusion is useful for the rest of the cities. So we highlight the importance of having first define the main objective of using the library, and then define further which are the main criteria the city is most interested. They find maybe some difficulties with using the library for this lower scale, because they don't identify clearly who will be the end user of the library at this level, if it's the designer or the contractor, or which entity need to be the final end user of the library is not clear at this stage. And they also highlight that the urbanist direction from the municipality can only set out some direction and targets, but they don't choose the option and solution. So they are not the main user of the library in this sense in order to select the adaptation measure. And also at this stage of selecting some solution at this urban development level, they need more specific information, which needs to be context specifics, because at the end the library is gathering different papers which are from different locations, which are done worldwide. But at the end, we know that the effectiveness is context specific, and we should have a closer look to the local environment in order we want to select some specific measure at this fine scale. So the adaptation library can give some range of effectiveness depending different studies, so you can have some idea of which are the highest effectiveness or lowest, and you can compare adaptation measure looking these ranges. But at the end, it's not giving the main effectiveness that this adaptation measure will have in a specific context. For this, you should modelize the measure and modelize the effectiveness of that. So for this purpose, it's not it's not developed the library. So which are the next step with Paris in this regards? What they are trying to organize a testing workshop for which they want to involve the urban developers. And well, we are waiting on that and see how far we can go at this lower scale, which can be more difficult than testing the library at city scale. Well, in which stage we are regarding the development of the library? We have now the version 3, which has been circulated. And we are now preparing the version 4, which aims to be ready end of April. And we want to have the final version by the end of June. So, well, we are having a continuously improvement process. So that's why we are very happy to receive feedback from all of you in order to improve the tool. And well, I wanted to now give the floor to Eleanor in order to follow with the question and answers.
Thanks, Madeline, and thanks for that overview of your work with the library. I think it's important to revisit that. A lot has been going on behind the scenes in between various workshops and events. And yeah, I think that a refresher is quite helpful. It's also interesting to see how some of the cities are using it already or testing it already. And I'd point out that Marie Gantois from the city of Paris is joining us today and probably has plenty more to say about that side of things. But for now, before we go any further, I'd just like to well, I'd like to open the floor for a few questions. Madeline, if you could take us to the next slide, please. Yep. So just a few minutes for Q&A, one slide along. We'd like to open this up, first of all, to you guys. So you've now heard a little bit about the library, or reheard for some of you. For some of you, this will be quite familiar information. But before we go any further and get into some more detailed information about using it, I'd like to hear a bit about your expectations from the library. What do you think maybe the library can do for you? Madeline, if you could take us to the next slide, please. Yeah, so I'd like to open the floor to actually the cities right now. Feel free to either speak up, you need to unmute yourself first, or to write a question in the chat. You can address that question to all panelists. So you've seen just now a little bit about how Paris and Bratislava are using the library, thinking about your own work in climate change adaptation, your past work, your present work, what you might do in the future. Do any ideas come to mind about how you might use the library? And perhaps those Tier 2 cities who were present in Manchester have had maybe a little bit more time to reflect on this quite recently, might like to take the lead. Don't all speak at once. So fortunately, Technalia has already been giving this some thought, and yeah, already has some ideas of some potential ways in which the library might be used. Madeline, did you want to take us through these?
Yeah, well, we identify after some talk with the cities which can be the potential use cases of the library. The first one is, well, it cannot have this order, it can be different, but from one hand, we see that it can be useful to develop this preliminary portfolio of adaptation measures in order to identify these structural or social or institutional measures. We also think that it can be, well, we are including in the database some criteria that can be useful for prioritize, even considering that we have some criteria from library which need to be complemented with other criteria from the municipality. So we are covering more cost information, benefit or benefit cost ratios, also the effectiveness, the co-benefit, and this, well, can be useful for prioritize, but they should be completed with other criteria like visibility or other feasibility and other well, locally that has more important locally and need to be identified. But we can just check the library and extract the main criteria that the city can be interested on. Then it can be also useful to evaluate the progress on a climate change adaptation plan, in sense of well, if we know a little bit which is the performance of the adaptation measure, we can figure if we are progressing adequately with the adaptation plan. It can be also used for a better understanding of different type of measures, for one hand, in order to see how effective they are, to see how we can combine these different solutions, but that's considering that they have different performance. For example, a cool pavement will have a different performance regarding air temperature reduction if we compare with a tree. So we can make this comparison and see how are they perform in different situations. And we can also select the indicators for monitoring spanning in the database and in the indicators we are hosting in the library. It can be also used for complete the major SADAT report in sense of there is a section which will need to be reported the outcome-based the outcome of the adaptation measure. So, well, the effectiveness indicator we are providing are the outcome-based indicators, so they can be used to complete this major SADAT report in case the city has not made a specific study or modeling in their city. They can go to the library and take some range of effectiveness or cost benefit. It can be also useful to have some examples of how this measure needs to be implemented, going through the database, but also going detecting the main paper and well, checking the paper. And this is in line with the next one, which is extract the literature on one specific topic, because, for example, Paris was interested in looking how the traffic intensity can can have some impact on air temperature, and that's changing the intensity. We can use this as adaptation measure in order to reduce the air temperature, for example. So there is some specific literature on that, and well, through the database you can localize which is the paper and search it in the Google, or ask us to the consortium, the main paper, and we can share them. And it can be also useful to find some adaptation measure or solution which can be included in other plans strategies. So we can just take the opportunity if the city is doing other type of plan, like a mobility plan or resilience plan. We can go through the database and check which action or solution can be useful for different purposes, for mobility, but also for resilience, but also for adaptation. So we can just find these measures and include in other plans. And also it can be useful for training municipal agents, and we want to, well, we want to say with this that at the end the library contains a lot of information which comes from literature, and it can be useful to see, well, which is the best indicator to assess the effectiveness, and how, well, for example, the cool pavement can have a highest effectiveness if we are measuring surface temperature than air temperature, and we can, well, figure how we need to monitor some effectiveness depending the main objectives we have. So we can just train or use it for training and having a closer look to the adaptation measure and understand better how they are performed. And well, the idea of today is to work in more in detail in two of the use cases, and we'll give some example of how we will go through the library in order to develop this preliminary portfolio from one hand, and how we can use the library also for extract information for prioritized adaptation measures. So we are going to cover these two examples in the webinar.
Okay, everyone. So now for the fun part. It's one thing to hear about the library, of course, and everything it can do and is supposed to do. But I think the best way to really understand it is to use it yourselves. So that's really what we're aiming to do today. Now, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind here. The way it will work is you need to refer to a kind of a worksheet that we sent you yesterday. as a PDF file. So please, if you don't have that already with you, take a few moments to locate it. I'm not sure, Serene, if we can also share it here as a file. Or, yeah, probably the best thing to do is to locate that in your inbox. Or the other option is, if you somehow can't find it, if you'll see at the top of your screen there are two tabs. If you click on the right-hand side tab, it's going to take you to another set of what looks like slides, but it's actually the slides that make up that worksheet rather. So that is very important for you to follow along with the detailed instructions that Madeline is going to give right now. Separately to that, you actually need to get into the library. Now, Serene has just shared a link there. So please click on that link, and that will take you to a page where you can simply log in as a guest. It's really simple. And finally, Madeline is going to share her screen. So in addition to following along the step-by-step instructions on the worksheet, you will also be able to see what Madeline is doing on the screen there. So lots of support, a few things to keep track of though. Please take a few moments just to get all of those things together, and if you're having problems or missing anything, please write to us in the chat. Okay, so Madeline's just sharing her screen. And Madeline, just also to clarify, with the case study example, should everyone be also following along themselves in the library, or is it better, do you think, if they just watch what you're doing first of all, and then we do the two use cases together?
Well, we can just follow the PowerPoint, or I can, well, my idea was to show in the library how which are the main steps to follow in the next exercise. So I can do in the web page daily, and the people can follow the printed or the PDF we send.
Okay, so for the first, Madeline's first of all going to go through an example. So you can watch that on her screen, and also follow along with the steps on your worksheet there. And then the next two use cases, that's when the best idea is to dive in and try to use the library yourself.
So
with Madeline providing guidance, of course.
Yeah. So the case study examples we try to, well, I wanted to explain a little bit which is the structure of the library. So as you see, we have in the left part some filters, which can be the hazard. We have the scale, region, type, target, sector, group, and option. So you can use the left part to filter in the adaptation option depending these criteria. Then, in addition to filters, we have this information screen where all the filtered information will be shown. So in the right part, you have this information screen. We also have in the upper part of the information screen different tabs which have different kind of information. For example, we have general tab in which we are providing some general information. We are providing the name of the adaptation option. So you have the list of the adaptation option. We are providing, we are grouping the adaptation option, as I said, in 28 groups. And we are providing some general information of co-benefit of the adaptation measure. And in the right part, you can see some numbers, which are the number of cases that this adaptation measure has in the different tabs. For example, in general, for adaptation studies in enterprise, we have 3 cases. This is related to, well, it can be 3 different papers, or it can be 3 different case studies in one unique paper. And then we have like 9 cost cases, and this means that we have 9 case studies which covers the cost of these adaptation measures. So this information is provided in order to have a look quickly for which adaptation option we have which kind of information, because we are not covering all the heat or flood or vulnerability information for all adaptation measures. For some we have all the information, and for other we have only one specific information. So you can see this at general table, and then in cost efficiency tab, then we can see more all the adaptation option which has some cost efficiency data, and in heat effectiveness is the same. We are providing the adaptation option which has some heat reduction capacity, and in flood we are including all kind of flood which also can be filtered by hazard. You can differentiate by fluvial, pluvial or sea level rise flood, and we are including all the adaptation options that can reduce the flood in this tab. Then we are providing also some few information regarding vulnerability and implementation. I would like to highlight that is less information, because the literature is not covering too much the vulnerability or the implementation issues of the measures, so we have less information for these tabs. We also have in the structure of the library 2 options in the 2 levels of information in the upper part. One is called option, so we are giving the information at option level. For example, one can be dry proofing, but we can also jump to the study cases. So we can see here that we have more or less 100 general options, but if we jump to the study cases, we have more or less 700 study cases. The meaning of this is that, for example, for cool pavement, we can have several studies covering the effectiveness. We can have 10 or less studies, and we are including all the studies in order to group the information at option level and give the range of effectiveness or the range of cost efficiency of these measures. So you can jump from a more general level of information, which is option, to a more detailed level of information, which is study cases. So this is the main structure of the database, for which we also added some, in the upper part, some help text, in which we are providing, the welcome, which is a summary of what is the Adaptation Option Library, some guide for which we are giving some information of, we are explaining the structure of the library, as I did now, and we are providing this more specific information regarding what we are referring when we are talking by cost, what we are referring when we are talking about heat effectiveness or flood effectiveness. So you can just check and have additional information of what is about this each criteria or each type of information. And then we included some hazard information, some general information of what happens at the European level regarding these hazards. So we can close the help, and whatever you need, you can just click the help button and this will appear again. Then we also included the filter by keywords, so you can use the keyword filtering. If you have some clear idea of one specific adaptation option, you can just include some name, and the searching will be done by this keywords functionality. And also we provide some stars favorite option. which can be click and select some specific adaptation option, and we can also show only the favorite option and have a closer look only to the selected ones. And then we can also just reset favorite and go back to the initial page. So this is what we have as a structure, and I wanted to give some. We summarize in 5 steps that we can do the use of the library. So I would like to just show you which will be the most important 5 steps to following with the library. And the first one is, you need to have a clear idea of the approach or the purpose of the objective of using the library. So first, having a clear idea that, for example, you are using the library to select adaptation option or compare adaptation option from gray and green, and you want to see green and gray adaptation solution, then you need first to use the filter. So once we have a clear idea of what we want to do with the library, then we go to the filter. And this example is regarding that we want to compare the green versus gray flooding adaptation option. So first, we need to filter and select the flooding. So if we have a clear idea of which type of flooding we want to achieve, we need to select one. Or if we want to select the adaptation measure for multiple flooding, we need to select all type of flooding in this case. And then you need to click outside to make the filter. And we want also to select the green and gray solution. So for that, we have the type category of criteria, which is the type of measure which are classified by the IPCC. And in this sense, we have the gray solution and we have the green solution. So we just click on both and we click outside the filtering. And now we have filtered by flood hazard and green and gray solution. And we are showing 9 options which are covering all this purpose of reducing floods and being gray and green solution. So we have different options here, and the next step will be to further check the information in different tabs. So once we have this information, we can just jump to the cost efficiency tab and see how we have the cost efficiency information. We selected the variable benefit cost ratio, as you see. So you can see the variable is benefit cost ratio. It is explaining in the help section that the benefit cost ratio, if it's higher than 1, then the measure it's beneficial, and if it's lower than 1, then the measure is costly. So if we have a look to the benefit cost ratio and we go to the right part, we can see the minimum average and maximum benefit cost ratio. So we can have some numbers which are upper one, which is in this case, for example, we have the trees, and we have also the sustainable drainage system and water storage. So in the efficiency column, we are providing the summary of the numbers we have in the right part, so we can just quickly check which are costly and which are beneficial ones. Then we can also jump to the heat effectiveness, or sorry, to the flood effectiveness in this sense, in this case, because we are covering the floods, and we are providing how effective are these measures regarding flood reduction, and we are providing different variables. As you see, we have runoff reduction, flood probability reduction. We have different type of variables, and we can just check which has the highest effectiveness, which the lowest one. So we are giving a summary of effectiveness, and then in the right part, we are giving the number of minimum, average, and maximum. So we try to give a range of effectiveness depending the different case studies. We can also jump to vulnerability in order to see if we have some information, and in this case, we have some information for them. And we can also, and in this case, we have some information regarding sensitivity and adaptive capacity of the adaptation measure. And last, we can jump to implementation, and we can see how many numbers of cases we have for park trees. And in this sense, we can just jump to the study cases in order to see which kind of information we have at implementation, which is the feasibility, funding. Well, there are some fields which are empty, but there are other fields for which you can have some information. So going back to the screen of option, and after having a look to different tabs, then we can just decide to export to CC. So we can just export, and we can see that the file is exported, and we can just open with the Excel file and see this general information of grass, green, parks, the co-benefit, and how many cases we have. We can extract any tab we want. So it's just to select the tab of cost efficiency or general, and give to the export button, and you will have this file in your laptop. So these are the main functionality of the library, and well, the aim of the following minutes is to go through the two use cases we already defined. So, well, I think that it's mostly clear what the data can do. If you have any doubt, just put it in the chat, and Eleanor will let me know if I need to highlight some point or clarify some aspect. So going through the
okay. Sorry, Madeline, to interrupt it. Just a moment, just in case anyone's lost. So looking at your worksheet, you should now be at the end of the case study example. That was the case study example that Madeline's just gone through on the screen there. So you should be at the page that reads Use Case 1, develop a preliminary portfolio of adaptation measures. And as Madeline said, of course, if any... Yeah, thanks, Madeline. Yep, you can go back to your screen now. But yeah, as Madeline said, if anyone is having any issues or is completely confused or even has any specific questions about what we just saw, please feel free to type those in the chat, and we'll we can read those out and address them as a group. So don't be shy. This is also supposed to be an interactive session, and Madeline would very much welcome your questions as we go through, so don't feel like you're interrupting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah,
in the meantime, I'll hand back to Madeline.
So thank you, Eleanor, and yeah, if you can follow the next exercise, please try to go through the database and through the library, and making this filtering and looking at how this is used and how is the information shown. So for the use case 1, we define, if the aim is to develop a preliminary portfolio of adaptation measures, then we can start deciding that we want to select some structural or physical measures, some social or institutional. We have different type of measure which can be selected in order to get the purpose we are already defined in the adaptation. So first step will be to clarify which adaptation approach you are interested in. For example, depending the type of measure, you can have some clear idea of which type of measure you want to include in the library. Sorry?
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry, Madeline, for interrupting, but we actually have a question to you. I don't know if it's now the right time to ask it. I can also send it to you separately. So the question is that the description of
go
measures.
ahead. Yeah.
The description of measures, example, grass, trees, green roof, green infrastructure, and so on. Many options have the same name, which is very cryptic, so it's not clear what to expect under a specific option. Can you show us how options are explained?
So yeah, you have we have different options which are grouped in a same under a same adaptation group name, which well it's not very easy to find, but there is a question mark close to the group name. Yeah, if you have if you put the mouse closer to this group name, it's the description of the group is displayed. We are working now for doing the same for option. So we are going to include the description of each adaptation measure in a similar way. So we are going to include this question mark, and you will be able to see the description of the option. So in this regard, well, there are a lot of measures which are, in this sense, we are reviewing the names because it's true that we have some combined measure like grass, green roof, grass, trees, for which it has been difficult to split the results of the papers. Because they are measuring the combined effectiveness of the measures. So we can have some effectiveness information of the grass by itself, but also we can have some effectiveness information or if we are combining two green measures, like, for example, grass and green roof. So we decide to include these categories, even they are combination, because there are, well, most of the studies really combine these measures. So we are not able to split them, which will be the best solution, but we decide to already include them because they are providing very important information. So we can see which are the most effective combinations too. We are reviewing all these entries of grass, green grass, and all this combination in order to try to split them in case if it's possible, or try to rename them. So this is not the last version, as I said. And we are going to review the names again, and we are going to try to avoid confusion and include description, as I said. So if it's clear enough, well, I will just follow the exercise, and if it's not clear, please let me know, and I will try to explain better. So, well, I'm going to the first use case in which I was highlighting the importance of having a clear idea of which is the adaptation approach. I put an example like if we want to have a closer look to the adaptation measure, which are green and gray, we can use the type filtering for selecting them. So if we have a clear idea of which type of measure we want to push, or if it's a combination, then we can just select the gray, green. We have here some mistakes in the database, but these are going to be solved because the gray one appears twice, but we are solving these issues. So just you need to select in the type filtering the gray and green solution if this is the main type of adaptation option you want to push in your city. You just click outside the filtering, and you will see that we have 66 options which are inside this category of gray and green. So the next step will be to see. We can also have the aim of comparing the gray solution versus green. So if we want to compare them, we can just select one and then other and extract in a different tables, or extract this one and then try to make it different differences and comparison. So in this case we have both of type of measures in the screen, and we can just if you put the mouse close to the title option, but it is the same for all of the names you have in the header. If you put the mouse close to the name of the header, you can shorten the information. So this is this can be useful in order to shorten the option from A to W, so you can find easier or have a look easier of the main adaptation measure you have in the pre-selection or in the informational screen. And you can see the number of cases. Sorry, it's
sorry, just one more question.
Talking?
Yes, how can we undo a certain filtering?
Sorry?
How can you undo a certain filtering?
I didn't get if you are asking how to do the shortening.
I think the question is, Madeline, if you've applied filters, how do you undo it? How do you remove those filters?
Yeah, you have a reset button in red in the close to filters in the upper part. So you need to click in reset, and you remove all the filters.
Thanks.
Okay, so if we go again to the green and gray solution, and we can use the shorten function in order to order all the entries, and we can also check the number of cases we have. So this is a kind of we can know how much literature we have behind this adaptation measure. So for some we have more literature, like for example building height. We have more literature, and for other we have less literature, like the aquifer or other adaptation measures. So just you can see which kind of information we can have for each adaptation measure, and then we can just export the file and open it. And open it in the Excel file, and we can work just in Excel with this short list of adaptation measures. So these are the adaptation measures which are for covering gray and green solution, and we have this 66 measure which can be organized whatever you want in the Excel file. So going back to the web page, then we can also use different filtering. Maybe the adaptation approach can be decided also by type of different additional criteria that can be important for each city. For example, you can also combine all the filters in order to pre-select a short list of adaptation measures. We have the example of selecting the heat-related hazard, because one city can be more aware or can have more problems with heat and want to have a short list of heat-related adaptation measures, they should take put heat waves in the filter, and then, for example, if one city is want to have a more closer idea of which is the effectiveness of this measure in a similar climatic region. When we are including the region, there is a work done by IPCC in which there are different climatic regions in Europe. So we start classifying each case study in different climate regions in order to have a better idea how they are performed in different climate regions. But we, at the end, we open this region to all worldwide because we have studies from different countries outside Europe. So, in case you are you want to see adaptation measure information which are analyzed in Mediterranean climate region, you need to just click on this region, climatic region, and you will see that we have a short list of 20 general options, and we can also export this information. So in this sense, we have information which are analyzed in Mediterranean region for building cover or cool materials or grass in general sense. So this is one of the case studies I wanted to make. So if we do the export function in the same way, then we can have this short list of adaptation measures that can be useful to make this portfolio of adaptation measures. So we can just organize the measures, and this is the starting point of doing the portfolio. So we are.
Sorry, Madeline, if I could just ask a question there.
Yeah.
It's my own question, but maybe others are having this issue. When I go to export those measures, when I see your screen and you doing it, you get a really nice, neat, organized table with everything in the correct column. When I do it, I see like a mix of basically everything, sort of all the information connected together in one line. It's not neatly organized or separated at all. Am I doing something wrong there?
No, it's depending. It's a CSV, so you have all delimited with comma. So when you open in the Excel program, you should tell that the columns are separated by commas. So you can just go to Excel file and say open. Sorry, because it's in Spanish in this case, but so you go to sorry, where is open now? Here. You need to.
So it's important to save the document first and then open it rather than opening directly from the.
Yeah. So if I go to the download files, or you can save it whatever you want in your laptop. When you identify the CSV, you can just open in the Excel file. Well, I have this is done automatically in my case, but you can just say in the Excel file that the columns are separated by commas. So if you do that, this will be open in Excel like you see in my case.
Okay, thank you.
So having this.
Sorry, Madeline. Am I correct that we've concluded the first use case?
Yeah, because we have a few minutes to go through the second case study, and I think that it's complementary with the first case study. The second case study is to go deeper in the information. So the first case study was more to show you how you can get the short list. So it's just using the filters here, and you can get from general the short list of adaptation measures depending the filters you already implemented.
Yes, indeed. Madeline,
yeah.
since it's 20 past 12,
yeah.
I've just got an eye on the clock here, and we had allocated an hour and a half today, so there may be some participants who need to leave us at 12:30. So I would like to propose a slight change in the program. I think it's important that we really allow enough time for discussion and questions and comments here. So can I suggest that we do that right now? So we call for questions and have some discussion here. Maybe you can explain some things that need a little bit more information. And then I would say anyone who is interested in carrying out the second use case, we can either allocate an additional 15 minutes or 15, 20 minutes to that, or that's simply an exercise that can be done individually. Yeah? How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah, if anyone can go through the use cases and through the steps we define, and well, if you have any doubt, you can just write me and we can exchange emails.
So for now, though, a few questions. Those of you who have managed to use the library successfully, I wonder if you'd like to share with us, with Madeline in particular, is the information there that you're expecting? Or is there anything missing?
We actually do have one question. It's also about the filtering, so in follow-up to what you explained, it says that it would be useful to go back just one step in the filtering instead of resetting everything, just as a comment.
Thank you. That's a good comment. Something Technalia can take on board. I'm wondering, so for those of you perhaps it's your first time with the tool, anything else that is possibly confusing? Anything that doesn't make sense? No? No particular things coming out there? Okay, what about, let's maybe go from a more positive angle. What are the things that you liked about the library, that you liked about the quick exercise that we've just done with Madeline? What can you see being useful?
Hello. Sorry, but we have one more question, and it is, will the library include a tool to undertake health and equalities impact assessments?
Sorry, if the tool
will include, the question is that, will the library include a tool to undertake health and equalities impact assessments?
Air quality, yeah.
No, health, not air quality, health and equalities.
Ah, okay.
Equality, social equality.
Yeah. Well, we are providing how effective they are regarding hazard reduction, so heat, flood. So in this regard, well, it's not directly related, but it can be related to health in sense of we are reducing the risk. But in the vulnerability, we try to include some sensitivity and adaptive capacity which can have some indicators of, or some social indicators and health indicators. And well, in the cost sense, the benefit are, if you go to the cost efficiency tab and you click in the study cases, you will see which type of cost and benefit are considered. In case of benefit, they are, we also included the health effect, but there is no study, we didn't find studies covering the economic effect on health. So at the end, we couldn't include the health as we wanted.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I also have a couple of positive comments here. So one says that it's really nice that there are so many cross filters. And the other one is that Micah says, very nice work on bringing all available information on measures together.
So to clarify on the cost-benefit issue, Madeline, it's only economic costs and benefits that are considered in that calculation. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, or are translate to monetary. So it's including monetary benefits, environmental benefits, social benefits, and health benefits. We couldn't get any paper, but we have different type of benefits which are translate to monetary, to dollar in this case. But they are not only monetary benefits.
Okay, and if people want to find out more about the methodology you used, is that available somewhere on the website?
We have a internal deliverable, which well, I wanted to put it publicly, so we are trying to summarize and do it a brief summary of the deliverable, in which we are analyzing and comparing different adaptation measures statistically. So maybe it's too technical, but we want to try to make a summary which, well, is not too technical, but well, still is not available.
Okay, but the plan is to make that information public.
Yeah, in this sense, we try to include in the cost efficiency and heat and flood effectiveness a comment column in which we try to include some results from the statistical analysis or some conclusion we get in order to, well, help understanding better the number which are provided by the library.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering, I selected parks, and I was interested by the results of a park compared to, and then I see a nice table of the papers referring to this. But is there a possibility to have a summary of all these papers, because now I have to read them all to know the measures of the park or which type of trees are used in order to get this reduction of temperature, for example?
Yeah, well, we are not including any summary because, well, we try to extract the most important information and put it in different tabs of heat effectiveness or the general one. So we didn't create this summary, but somehow we are trying to extract in the most important information regarding performance in the library. So, well, my proposal will be to, well, try to check the paper and go to the summary of the paper, but I cannot provide any other summary by each paper because we already extracted the most important information for the library.
Okay, thanks.
So Madeline, is the idea really that you're trying to eliminate or get rid of the need for practitioners to read all those papers because they can have confidence that your team has reviewed them and arrived at this result? Is that how you see it working?
Well, just the library I showed will be like the raw information we extracted from the literature, and we are now developing other layer for the web page, which will have a summary of all by each adaptation measure. So we want to have other layer for non-expert, give some summary of conclusion from each adaptation measure. So maybe this can help to the ones that don't want to go in deep in each adaptation measure and want only to have some summary information for each adaptation measure. And this will be ready by the end of April.
Okay, great. But I think, as you say, the next exercise, the prioritizing of adaptation measures, is really an important next step. I would imagine that so far there's too many adaptation measures collected, and it needs to be a matter of refining and prioritizing in order to move forward. Unfortunately, I think we won't have time to do that together today, but I hope that the group is feeling confident, having had a little bit of help getting hands-on with the library, to take it forward individually in your own offices. So Madeline, I would maybe hand over to you to outline what the next steps are for the library now, and how people can continue to be involved.
Yeah, well, as we already said, we want to collect as much as feedback as possible in order to improve also the visualization, navigation, the usability. We are now working on the names of the adaptation measure and avoiding confusion in the data we are providing. But also we are working on this summary of adaptation measure in order to give different entries on the library to the non-expert user or to an expert user, so giving two possibilities of entries. But we know that maybe the library has been created from the scientific perspective at the first stage, but is evolving to a tool which needs to be more user-friendly. So all the feedback we can have from you, it's very much appreciated. And we created a short questionnaire, which I think Eleanor will already share you, or will share you, and will share with you. And we are asking you if you can take some time to complete. We will be happy to receive your feedback.
Yeah, so Serene is going to share that link now. You'll see it pop up in your chat window sometime soon. It's just a very quick online survey. There it is. Yeah, so it would be very much appreciated if you'd like to take the time, fresh after your experience of using the library, to tell us how you found it, and make sure that your impressions and your comments and your valuable feedback don't go to waste.
And regarding other tools or works we are doing in RESIN, the first tool is the Adaptation Options Library, but the aim of this tool is not only to provide a list of adaptation measures. We want to go further, and we want to also extract the right information which can be useful for prioritization. And we are working now with other existing tool, which is climate prior tool, with which the aim is mainly ranking measure of the climate adaptation plan. And this is already, we are testing this in Paris and Bilbao. And as I said, we want to extract part of the information from the library, but then include additional important criteria for the city in this prioritization tool. And also, then we want to finish the RESIN work designing adaptation pathways, which intend to put in sequence over the time the different adaptation measures already prioritized. And we are going to work on that, so we already started working on that in Bilbao and Manchester. So we are going to keep you informed on the progress of that. And maybe this overview justify more why we structure the adaptation option library in these different criteria or in these different tabs, which aims to extract information which can be useful for prioritization, but also for the adaptation pathway design.
Thank you, Madeline. I'd just like to call for any final questions before we close the session for today. Any questions for Madeline, or any questions regarding the Tier 2 Circle of Learning process in general? Okay, if not, then I am going to wrap up. It's time for us to say goodbye. Just a reminder, or just a note too, that we do record these webinars, so that recording will be made available. If any of you have colleagues who are unable to join today, you might want to share that with them. Equally, we will share the slides so that you can pass on that material as well. And obviously you have the worksheet if you'd like to continue to work through the prioritization exercise. Thank you once again very much for making the time to be with us today. Your involvement is really a critical part of the RESIN project, I would say, and I hope that it's also been somewhat informative for you and perhaps an opportunity to consider using this tool in your future work. I would very much encourage you to take the few moments to fill out the survey at the link already shared. And I would also just say that your ongoing involvement in the final months of the RESIN project is in some ways up to you what shape that takes. So obviously we have formal testing activities with our Tier 1 cities, but if you or colleagues of yours have a particular interest in specific engagement with Technalia and with the library, if you are very keen to test future versions or provide detailed feedback, for instance, in conversation with Madeline or with Efren, they would be very interested in hearing from you. So please don't be shy, and please also see this as an opportunity very much for your city's work and your city's views to be represented in this final product, which will obviously have a life beyond the RESIN project. So thank you very much. Thanks very much to Madeline in particular, and goodbye from our side for now.
Thanks to all. Goodbye.